What's up, guys? Time to do some gambling. We heard there's a good game tonight. We're headed out there right away, jumped in the car, took off. We've got our money. We've got the right mindset, I hope. We're going to try and run up a big stack tonight. Feel pretty decent about how we played in the last session, but there were a couple small mistakes that we're going to look and try to avoid. We did win a monster bomb pot, so maybe we can win another monster bomb pot, or maybe we can just skip bomb pots because we hate them. Here we go. Green light. Let's get after it. Okay, first hand of the night, we're looking down at a bomb pot. We've got King 774 with spades here. Not the best hand in the world, but one board, the flop comes down 10-10-7, so we're flopping a full house. There's $90 in the pot, and we have absolutely nothing on the other board. Action checks to me. I bet out $75, and we get one call. So we're going heads up to two different turns, which are basically meaningless to us. We still have nothing on one board and still have a pretty respectable full house on the other. Both of us check. So off to see a river, which is once again nothing important. Bomb pots are dumb, guys. I don't know how else to say it. River comes down, pretty much blanks. My opponent bets $150. I think I have to call here just to try and chop. We end up putting in the money, and thank God we chop. I just had to risk effectively my entire stack to make a profit of like $30. Not a big fan of bomb pots. I think they're bad for the game. Sure, everyone gets a chance to gamble, but this is just going to make players who are generally losing lose much faster, or just instantly bust in one hand, which gives them a bad overall experience and can make them straight up quit the game, or go a long time between playing. So don't like them. This is the last and only bomb pot you're gonna see me play in this session. In for $5 in this hand with all the limpers, we've got Queen Jack offsuit and we're in the cutoff. We end up going 5 ways to a flop, which is a decent one for us. We're flopping middle pair here. We see a very loose opponent bet out $30. I'm not going to be scared away by this. This is a player I think is going to play a very wide range. We're going to go ahead and put in the money. If we're giving money to this player, we don't mind it too much. We're making the call. We're going to see a turn card. We've got a few very particular cards in mind, and one of them is the Queen of Diamonds, which we see on the turn. We've got trips now. We get some bad news when our opponent checks. We want to keep him on the hook though. I'm going to go ahead and make a bet here. I decide to bet out $30 in the weirdest, messiest way possible, and we're very happy when he snap calls. So we are off to see a river, which is Bink the Jack of Diamonds. So we've got a full house now. We've got the virtual nuts. Feeling great. Our opponent bets $95 after thinking about it for a little bit. He puts in a little bit of a tank before assembling quite the bet. Obviously, with this stack, we really only have one move when we're facing that bet. We're going to go all in for around $260, and our opponent snap calls. We are pumped. We show our hand. We're going to take this one down. He shows also, it's a huge cooler for him. He's got ace 10 offsuit for a river Broadway. The Jack of Diamonds was the best card in the deck for us, giving us a full house and him a straight. We're taking down a massive pot here, getting things started off right. This is why we like playing real poker and not bomb pots. Taking this one down. Feels great to stack up a big win here early in the session. Let's have a hell of a night, guys. This one felt really, really good. Obviously a huge cooler, nothing too much our opponent could do, but we take this one down. Feeling great. Big pot. Stacking these chips, on to the next hand. We're going to have a big session. Looking down at pocket twos, we are on the button this time. We've got around $600 after winning that massive all-in hand. We see an open to $20 from the cutoff. We're going to make the call here. We are mining for a set. Let's see if we can hit one. Everybody click that like button in 3, 2, 1. Looks like everybody clicked that like button because we flop a set, but they're all spades. It is a full spade board. We see a very loose opponent bet $30 from under the gun. And when the action folds to me, I think it's time to put in a raise. I am not 100% sure what size I want to go with here. Please let me know what you guys think. I'm going to raise it up though for sure. I make it $135 to go. This is a loose player who feels like he calls pretty wide, so I want to charge a large amount to any spade holding that he possibly has. Unfortunately though, we see our opponent make the fold. So we're not sad to take this hand down. Nice little pot here, but obviously when you're flopping a set, you're hoping you can kind of get stacks in. Obviously we weren't hoping for a monotone board, but what are you gonna do? Stacking up chips, on to the next one. Looking down at pocket tens in this one, we've got about $750. We are In the hijack, we see an under the gun player open to $15. The action folds to me. This is an active young player. Sure, it's an early position to open, but I've got a pretty good pocket pair. We're going to raise it up. I make it 50 bucks here. He doesn't think about it for very long before making the call. So, against a young active player, I feel like we're in pretty decent shape. We probably have something of a range advantage here. Flop comes down, an interesting one. It's ace high on a paired board with no flush draw. He checks, and I check back. I think this is probably bad for me, but it's not bad if I'm going to do this with hands like ace king, ace queen, ace jack, because I'm going to have this board so locked up. Maybe ace jack's a bad example, but ace king and ace queen for sure. Turn comes down the four of spades. He checks. I bet $40 here, and he springs the trap. He raises to 175 bucks. This is a very big sizing. I don't think he's trying to get called here. I'm not really sure what he has. If he has any ace, though, he can feel very confident. I think I played this hand pretty poorly. I go ahead and make the fold. I think this is a very big size from him, but I don't know. Maybe it accomplishes his goal, which is to get me to fold. I would assume he probably has some sort of pair, probably something between eights to jacks. Obviously not eights since that would be quads, but anyway, we lose this hand. Kind of sucks. Think we played it bad. On to the next one. Looking down at ace two of hearts from the small blind, we've got about 650 bucks in front of us. We see a player in early position make it $15. There are several callers, and I also make the call. Here's where we pick up the table footage at. Flop comes down, 5-4-3 rainbow with no hearts. Bingo, guys. We just flopped a straight. I'm going to check here. We see the big blind check also right away, and then the action gets to the initial raiser who bets out $50. Obviously, this is a great spot for us. I think I'm going to make the call here against this particular player and with someone to act still behind me. Hopefully he can come along too and we can play a really big, really multi-way pot in this one. Great news there when we see the big blind make the call. Also, we're off to see a turn. Can we get a clean turn? Yes, we can. It's the jack of clubs, so we're still in great shape. I check. We're going to hope that the big blind will bet or something here, but he ends up making the check also, and then action is to the initial raiser. We're hoping for another bet from him, but we don't get one. We're going to have to do the betting ourselves. We bet $80 after we see a clean river come down. The big blind calls and the initial raiser calls. We show our hand and we take it down against a flop set and no idea what the other player had, some kind of overpair. It's a nice size pot. Obviously flopping a straight against a set there. I wish we could have got some more in, but we played it to try and get the maximum from the player we thought would put in the most money. So, oh well, we take this one down. Could have been bigger, but it's a pretty nice chunk. We're well on our way to having a big, big session. Looking down at 10-9 of diamonds from under the gun, we're going to go ahead and make the call here for $5 pre-flop, and it goes 8 ways to the flop. Yeah, 8 out of the 10 players or 9 players at the table make the call. We're off to see a flop, which comes down deuce, deuce, 9 with 1 diamond. So we've got top pair here on a paired board, but with it being so multi-way, we're not feeling too strong. We check, and the actions of checking to a very loose player who bets out $15. I'm not 100% sure what we should do here with top pair and a backdoor flush draw. I think we have enough equity that we can at least continue, but when the hand has gone this many ways, you kind of have to think somebody has a deuce. I'm going to go ahead and make the call. We see one other player call, and we're off to see a turn. So we'd really like to hit a 9 and counterfeit anybody who flop trip deuces, but that is not what happens. The turn is the king of clubs. We check to the raiser who bets $50. We see a fold, and I think we got to lay this one down. Obviously, this many ways to a paired board, there's plenty of reason to think someone has a 2, but against this particular player, in hindsight, this might have been a slightly tight fold. I think we could have stuck around for another street and see if he bet again, and if he didn't, feel like we're in good shape, but like I said, we lay this one down. I think that's the correct theoretical play. Looking down at 10 deuce of diamonds from the big blind in this one, I call $5 pre-flop and we go like 6 ways to the flop of king 10-10. We see the small blind bet out $15. I make the call of that bet. That's kind of where we pick up this hand. We see a very active player make it $30 to go. We see the small blind call and we're not going anywhere with trips. We're getting a little bit concerned though. The turn comes down, a pretty decent card. It's the 9 of spades. The small blind checks. I check, and then we see the active player decrease his size and bet only $30. I want to keep both players in the hand. I also think I could be up against a 10 with the worst kicker, so I'm going to make the call here, hoping that we can get to a cheap showdown and that we are the only one with trips here. River comes down the 8 of clubs. Action checks to the active player again. He bets out $75. Small blind goes well into the tank. I'm really kind of hoping that he folds at this point, because if he's going to make the call, then we are surely up against a 10 with a bigger kicker, right? But after a little bit, he does not fold. He eventually, after a long tank, puts in the call. I don't really think we can get away from this one, guys. I think we have to call also. I'm not too happy about it, as you can see, but I'm going to put in the call and show my hand. I've got the Brunson. I've got 10 deuce. We see the initial raiser flip over king 3, and we see the other player who called to play in the small blind flip over king queen. So we take this one down. It's a juicy 3-way pot, but I feel like we could have earned more, but I also feel like we had to play this cautiously with such a terrible kicker. Let me know what you guys think. I don't think we can really go for too much more or get too greedy with a 10 and just a deuce. Looking down at pocket fours from the hijack, +1 this time, we've got around $1,200 in front of us. We're feeling great. There's some limpers. A younger player in middle position makes it $20 to go. I call. 2 others call. We're going to be in position this hand though, so we're feeling great about that. Off to see a flop, hoping we can flop a set here, and it comes down king 9-4. Bang, we flopped a set with a pocket fours. We're going to bet out $25. We see the other players fold, and we're waiting on the initial raiser. We're really hoping that he had some part of this. Can he please have ace king one time? He makes the call, so we're pretty happy about that. The turn comes down a 7, so not the best card, not the worst card. He ends up checking to us pretty quickly. I think we're going to bet out again here on a king high board. I think he should have a good amount of kings that he's definitely going to pay off some bets with. He thinks about it for a little bit though and goes kind of into the tank. I'm hoping we can see some sort of playback here. It'd be amazing if he raised, if he read this as some sort of attempt to buy the pot. But before too long, he puts in the fold. So we don't get too much out of this hand, but it's a nice little pot to pick up. Another set. We are running hot. Let's keep building this stack. This is going to be a hell of a session. Looking down at ace 4 of spades from under the gun +1, we've got almost $1,300 in front of us. We see a relatively tight player open to $15 from under the gun. I'm going to raise it up here to $65, thinking we can either take this down pre-flop, or we've got a great hand with a ton of playability post-flop. We see our opponent telling a story. He's thinking about it for a while, eventually realizes that it's me. Somebody reminds him that I'm going to be recording this hand, and it's his chance to make the vlog. And as soon as he hears that, he snap makes the call. So we are off to see a flop. Not a bad flop for us. It's pretty reasonable. It's king high with 1 spade. So we've got backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw, and we've got an overcard, and we can very much represent that king. When we see our opponent check, we are going to put in a bet here. We're definitely not going to wait around. If we check here, it shows a lot of weakness. If we bet here, it shows a lot of strength. So we're going to bet out. We use a relatively large sizing of $80. He goes a little bit into the tank, thinking about it for a little bit. Eventually we see him put in the fold here. He folds and tells us that he had a pocket pair, so our bet was definitely a good one. We end up taking this thing down with not the best hand. Feeling pretty good. Everything seems to be working tonight. We're hitting our cards when we need to, and we are applying pressure when we need to. So far, so good. Looking down at pocket queens in this one, we see the under the gun +1 player make it $10 to go. There are 2 callers, and when the action gets to me in the big blind, I am going to raise it up. We've got a premium here. We're going to make it $45 to go. We see 2 early position players call, including the initial raiser. So we've got a very active player and a pretty good player who we know plays higher stakes involved in this hand. Flop comes down, not our favorite flop. The flop is king high, so we are kind of not feeling it. Not exactly what we were looking for. So we're going to go ahead and check our option here as the first one to act. So we're out of position. That's pretty unfortunate. But we check. We see 1 check and another check. So we're going to get to see a free turn card and maintain the betting lead in this hand. The turn is a 5, which is a great card. Obviously, it's not going to help any of them unless they have pocket 5s. I'm going to bet $55 on this card. We see the opponent to our left check his cards and then fold. And then we see the other opponent insta fold. So we're taking this one down. Decent little pot. Nice to win a hand with pocket queens when you see a king on the flop, so we take this one down. Looking down at Jack 10 of clubs, we have a monstrous stack of $1,450 in front of us, and we are in the small blind. There's some limpers to the button who makes it $20 to go. I call, and we end up going like 5 ways to the flop. So very multi-way to the flop, and that's where I hit the record button. The flop comes down 9-8-4 with 2 clubs. Obviously, amazing flop for us. I end up checking, and the action checks around to the button player, who starts to assemble a bet. We kind of wish we could have seen a free card here, or that we had taken the betting lead, but he bets out $80. I think this would have been a perfect time for us to spring the trap and go for a check raise, but instead of doing that, I end up making the call. Maybe we can keep multiple players in here and we can hit a huge draw against one of them and then play a large 3-way pot, but that seems a little bit optimistic. I think a good amount of the time I should be putting in a raise here. We see one other player call before we are off to the turn, which is the 3 of diamonds. I don't think I can really take the betting lead here, so I'm going to go ahead and put in a check, and we see the other player check, and the button checks also in this one. So we are off to see a free river card as well, which was pretty unexpected. Surely we can peel off one of our outs here, right? No, we cannot. The river comes down, the ace of hearts. Devastating. I feel like we've messed this hand up now pretty bad. I check, the other player checks, and we see the button go ahead and bomb it here. I think this is not the strongest line from him. He's betting at $130, but I'm not going to be the one to play back at him with only jack high, at least not in this situation. I fold, and so does the other player. I don't know, guys. Tell me what you think you would do here. The button was around $500 to $700 deep, if I remember correctly, and the other player in the hand had me covered, so it was very deep. I don't really know. I think I should have just went with it and check raised on the flop, and if we had to play a massive pot with a massive draw, so be it. Let me know what you think down in the comments, though. In the next hand, we're looking down at 10-9 of hearts. We've got around $1,400 in front of us, and we're on the button. I can't remember the pre-flop action as I was caught up in the shuffle of writing down hands, but I think I called $15 or $20 pre-flop, and we went a bunch of ways to a flop of 10-9-6. So great flop for us. We see a bet of $5 from the small blind, then the big blind raises to $40. I'm going to put in a raise here. We're going to bump it up. I make it $150 to go. Let me know what you think about this sizing. I feel like it was maybe a little bit big. We see the guy who bet $5 very quickly check his cards and then put in the fold. So he wasn't too interested in continuing. And then we see the player who bet $40, who we're kind of hoping for a call from, to be honest, even though he's super deep. We've got top 2 here, like we're in a good spot. Unfortunately, after thinking about it for a little bit, he puts in the fold also, so we take this one down. I think my hand needed protection here, but maybe that's too big of a sizing. Oh well, we're winning a nice pot. We'll take this one down, stacking some chips. Looking down at ace queen offsuit from the big blind in this one, we've got around $1,500, and we are about to play a crazy hand. I open to $40 pre-flop over a $10 button straddle. We see a whole bunch of folds, which has not been the norm in this session. As you guys have seen, most pots have been going multi-way pre-flop, no matter what the size is. I think opening to 40 here is a totally reasonable size when we've got a $10 button straddle going on. We only see a huge nit, an extremely tight, boring, pointless player in the cutoff make the call. So we don't love that, but we're off to see a flop, which is a pretty decent one for us. It's king jack 4 with 2 hearts. We've got the queen of hearts, so that blocks some flush draws. We've also got a draw to the nuts, and we're also going to have tons of hands like ace king and ace jack and king jack that are going to put us in a great position. I'm going to bet out $55 here, hoping we can just take this pot down right now, but he ends up raising it to $110. I've seen him min raise in spots like this a few times, and I've caught him bluffing in spots like this too with that min raise play. It doesn't make me feel great. I don't love it, but we still have outs to the nuts, and we still, I feel like, have a range advantage. And since he just called pre-flop, I would think that his range is fairly limited. I don't think he has kings or jacks. I wouldn't think that he would have ace king or hands like that. But you never know, he is a huge nit. I end up making the call here, and we go to see the turn, which is the 6 of clubs. I check, and he bets out $100 here. I think this is where I make one of my bigger mistakes in the hand, as I make the call, which I think is not good, especially when I'm holding the queen of hearts, which is a card I want him to have to be betting some sort of flush draw, although I don't think he would ever bet just a flush draw because he's an absolute nit who occasionally mixes in some weird raises to try and throw people off from the fact that he plays about 0.25 hands per hour. At least if I hit a 10, I have the nuts, so I make the call, and the river comes down the jack of diamonds. I think this is a very interesting card for me, as I can have some jacks as played. I could have ace jack of clubs, ace jack of spades for sure, and maybe some king queen or king jack hands as well. I decided we're going to turn our ace high into a bluff, and we fire out $275. We see the nit go well into the tank for a long time, over a minute, before finally thinking everything out. Once he's thinking for this long, I feel like we can maybe get him to give this thing up. He's thinking and thinking and thinking and looking over at me and looking at my stack and looking down at his stack and looking at his cards and like kind of sliding his cards towards the middle and kind of moving his chips around and doing all the things you would expect a super nit to do when he's put to the test. Eventually, he puts in the cryingest of crying calls. We are devastated. He ends up showing us ace king. Honestly, though, there was some chance I thought I could have gotten him to fold that hand, but apparently not. Also, he's an even bigger nit than I realized, flatting ace-king pre-flop in a game like this. I'm very mad at myself for torching off money into the abyss of a player who's not going to play another hand all night. I think against an actual player and not the biggest nit in the world, this play has more merit, since they could have turned a flush draw into a bluff, but he's never doing that, so this was just terrible. After this hand, I'm super tilted, and to make things worse, I go super card dead for like an hour. I'm mad at myself, I'm pretty tilted. Let's rack up and get out of here, even though we are way down from our apex in this session. Picking up a casual $600 profit in this session really shouldn't feel so bad, but I was way too tilted to record an outro, so this is what you get, me just standing in my office. In for $300, out for $900. Thought this was going to be a session where we had well over $1,000 profit, but we punted it all away into the abyss against that nit. Oh well, we're taking our profit, we're happy with it. Happy we got another upload out this week. See you guys next time. Things have been going really well on the channel, so I appreciate all the support. Please like and subscribe. Put a comment down below telling me one thing I could do to improve my play and one thing I could do to improve my vlogs. That would be fantastic. Thank you guys. See you next Tuesday with another episode.